You're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ford.
Hi, my name is Nina Nova.
Hi, I'm Lori Lee.
And you're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations
with Erika Washington.
Hey y'all, I'm Erika Washington.
And so what happened was we were not clear enough that when that Brown versus Board of Education decision was enacted, yeah, we'll let your kids come to school. But you know what we did not do was peel back the layers of all of those things.
When Black people win, when that win trickles all the way down to Black folks, everybody gets a piece of that pie.
I am so shocked by the system. And why aren't you screaming like your hair is on fire?
The clarity was, I'm running for governor. The trepidation was, oh boy, I'm running for governor.
Think about it. If our founding documents all say that we're a more perfect union, that we are always striving towards a more perfect union, then we should do that.
The Sticky Notes is for anyone who enjoys a good conversation.
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington.
Hey there, Sticky Note listeners. This is your host, Erika Washington. And as we continue our journey into our replay era, it felt like a good time to run back one of our most popular conversations. My good friend and fellow executive director, Dawn Blagrove, joined us earlier this year. You know, Dawn and I discussed politics, policy, and what we being the boldface in all caps and underlying important point of the sentence, what we need to do to thrive and repair our own communities. I think seeing the results of this past election day, where many people have become energized with this renewed excitement by what's possible, with some history-making, younger, more diverse-thinking individuals being elected in Virginia, Detroit, and New York City, the excitement has been palpable and contagious. However, I caution all of us to temper our excitement just a tad. So I think it's imperative that we don't just put all of our hopes into politicians. Even the best ones, near or far, are only human. And we need to remember, we are the solution. The architects of our own communities and the politicians we elect are just a part of our toolbox to help us solve the troubles that ail all of us. And to very loosely quote from my favorite musical, Hadestown, where Orpheus raises his glass to toast Persephone, who has finally returned to Earth, bringing with her spring, sunshine, and joy, and sustenance, asking nothing in return except that we should live and learn to live as brothers in this life, and to trust that she will provide. And if no one takes too much, there will always be enough. She will always fill our cups and will always raise them up to the world we dream about and the one we live in now. So cheers, and as always, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we did.
Way below acceptable. Way below acceptable.
On this week's episode,
When that win trickles all the way down to Black folks, everybody gets a piece of that pie. Because for the win to trickle all the way down to us, everybody has gotten something before us.
When Black women win, everybody wins.
Way below acceptable.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Sticky Note Conversations. This is your host, Erika Washington, and I am super excited to be having this conversation today and bringing it to you. A good friend of mine, someone that I don't see quite as often as I'd like to, but we seem to run into each other at random conferences across the country. She is the executive director of Emancipate North Carolina, an organization committed to fighting systemic and institutional racism and abolishing the carceral system. She's also an attorney, a proud graduate of FAMU and North Carolina Central School of Law. She also obtained her Bachelor of Science degree in political science with a minor in secondary education and a master's degree in applied social science. She has worked as a post-conviction staff attorney with North Carolina Prisoner Legal Services, and then later became the executive director of Emancipate North Carolina. She has emerged as a leading voice in North Carolina, demanding the end to mass incarceration and the dismantling of systemic and institutional racism. I could go on, but I'd like to now introduce the lovely, the wonderful, and the talented Dawn Blagrove to Sticky Note Conversations. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
You have an extensive biography. What I didn't see on your biography, though, is you are also an artist. And I am an owner of one of your lovely paintings. It is hanging in my hallway downstairs. And I know I need to grab some more work of yours soon. But, I feel like, hey, we need to pump that up just a little bit higher because it feels to me like art is a really big part of your life.
It is, actually, and it is a part of my life that it was a surprise, just like, so much of our lives. The things that bring us the most joy are things that we kind of stumble upon. Art was one of those things. I became an empty nester, my husband and I needed a new hobby. I picked up a paintbrush about 4 years ago. My youngest daughter is graduating this year from North Carolina A&T. So it's been 4 years and I just started doing it. And what I found was doing the work that we do, painting gives me peace. It quiets my mind and it makes me focus on the art that's in front of me in a way that very little else does for me. I've never really found anything else that has made my brain quiet the way painting does, the way creating does. And then there's also the necessary soul filling of starting something that's blank and creating something beautiful and having it be complete, a whole complete project that I can do in a matter of hours or a few days. It is in this work where we see so little progress sometimes, it is fulfilling for me and it is necessary for me to be able to take a blank canvas and create what I want to create my vision, because that is why I do this work. That is why I came to this work, is to create a world where Black folks can paint their own blank canvas and turn it into whatever beautiful thing that they want. And that work is hard and it's slow. And so being able to create is kind of an extension of, my overall desire to want to create a world where Black folks can be free and fully autonomous.
And I think that's a really important point because in this work, in this social justice work, you can't really turn it off because sometimes I could just be watching a movie or a television show and it's a stark reminder of what is happening around us, or might even just give me an idea of something to do or whatever. Next thing you know, I'm writing on a sticky note, like an idea. What is it that my organization or folks in our different coalitions could be doing? Or just also trying to think of ways in which to connect with the community so that they understand, what's happening. And I think that it's a beautiful thing that you are able to at least quiet that with your art and kind of concentrate on something else. But at the same time, some of the images that you create are of Black women, Black women doing things and what have you, but they do look quiet and peaceful.
And that is super intentional. I only paint things that bring me joy. I only paint things that make me happy. And what makes me happy? So what you will find that you almost never see in my artwork is a reflection of the social justice work that we're doing. But I love, Black women are my favorite, are my muse. Because we are everything, right? The color of our skin, the way that we move, the way everything about Black women, Black children, Black people is, is artistic, is beautiful, is poetry. So when I need to, and I paint from a reference photo. So when I find a photograph that makes me feel something, then I paint the photograph and I, whatever. And what I find is what moves me is when I see Black folks doing things that we should be able to do. Laugh, smile, dance, lounge on a couch if we want to, be in love, have families, grow plants and beautiful things, and grow food and whatever. So it is definitely therapeutic for me in this work, because this work is hard. And we're at a time right now when, you talk about connecting with the community. We're at a time of real crisis in this country. And as a student of political science, I can see the writing on the wall. I can see the terrible that's coming. I mean, we all can see it to a certain extent, but to the greater corrosiveness of this political environment, to our fundamental way of life, is frightening. And I feel like I have a responsibility to help people, to help ring the alarm. And it is hard. It is hard to find ways to connect with folks and to remind people at the same time of their own power, and not to cede that power to fear, not to cede that power to feeling overwhelmed, not to cede that power to what appears hopeless, right? Like this situation that we're in right now as a country. And so I never stop thinking about that. How do I help people prepare for what is coming? Because what is coming is going to be bad. And when I say people, I mean Black people. How do I help Black people? How do I help marginalized communities prepare for what's coming? Because we are in a full-fledged free fall. And when the country free falls, like it is now, any nation free falls like it is now, it falls on top of Black folks. It falls on top of brown folks. It falls on top of marginalized communities. And we've got to figure out a way to help educate folks, but also to help people fortify themselves for that fall, build shelters around themselves so that all of the weight of a falling country does not end up on our backs again.
So I want to talk a little bit about your organization, Emancipate. Did you start the organization? Is it yours?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So it's kind of a weird story.
Okay. I like weird stories.
Okay, great. Because this one is. I joined Carolina Justice Policy Center in 2016. Carolina Justice Policy Center was the brainchild of a rich white woman, and it started in 1977, and I joined in 2016. So it never was defunct. It always was doing whatever it was that it was doing. But it moved and functioned in the criminal justice ecosystem like an organization that was a pet project of a rich white woman. When she decided to retire because our major funder had pulled out, it was 2017. I became the executive director. I am a lawyer by trade, so I was very, very new to the nonprofit space, and good gracious, even newer to the nonprofit industrial complex itself. So the idea of having to raise money, having to find money, I had no idea how to do it. And I was already at a deficit because most of the donors that supported Carolina Justice Policy Center were, which happens all the time in nonprofit world, were the rich friends of the rich white lady whose pet project it was. So they all went away. So in 2017, I took over as the executive director and knew that I could do something really incredible with this organization. So we rebranded ourselves to Emancipate NC. We radically changed the look and the feel of the organization, the mission of the organization. We became an abolitionist organization. Our primary focus is in the criminal justice system. And what I think people turn to us most for is issues with law enforcement and holding law enforcement accountable. And those are all things that under the previous leadership, not only did we not do, we were forbidden to do. Like I wasn't able to do those things. Well, during work hours, I always did what I do, you know. So Emancipate was born, and then we just we just kind of hit the ground running. I knew I needed somebody for development. When I took over, I had like $70,000 in the bank. Took 20 of that to hire a part-time development person. I got really, really lucky, and a friend of mine named Elizabeth Simpson, a white lady who I had worked with at Prisoners Legal Services, graduated from Yale Law, and she reached out to me and she wanted the development position. And she was like, you know, I'm going to help you raise some money. I believe in what you're doing. We're going to do this together. We're going to shake shit up. And then, you know, when there's more money, we'll get paid more. And that's kind of what we did. And from that point to this one, we have blazed a trail of true abolition movement work across North Carolina and the country. And we have ramped up to a staff now of 9. And, you know, we just run around North Carolina kicking ass and helping remind the people of the power that they have.
Well, to me, it sounds like that, yes, you created this organization. If you started in the deficit, then you started from scratch. And so when you don't have nothing in your refrigerator and you went to the store and bought everything and you grew it to make it happen, then you created it. So that's what we gonna go with. So thinking about the movement to abolish prisons and the movement to defund the police, there's been constant conversation over the years of like, well, what does that even mean? And then what are you going to do with people? And how do you keep people safe? And, you know, if people don't want police, then, you know, it's just going to be complete anarchy. I would love for you to give folks your thinking on like, what does that actually mean? And what does that look like to move towards a space where we don't have prisons and where policing looks completely different than what it looks now?
So many people hear the term abolition and think the end of something. And what I want people to think about when they hear the term abolition is the ability to create something better. Well, it is about destroying the systems that we currently have that are so deeply rooted in systemic and institutional racism, so deeply rooted in the oppression of marginalized and Black folks, that there is no way that these systems can be corrected. We have got to throw them all out and create new systems to help address the real issue. And the first thing I think, when I talk about abolition, people immediately have this knee-jerk reaction that abolition somehow is a direct threat to their personal safety. And so the most important work of abolitionist work is to untether people's sense of personal safety from law enforcement and the carceral system. Because the facts and the data tell us that the two have absolutely nothing to do with each other. You know, people are always like, well, what do we do without the police? But the reality is law enforcement spends less than 10% of their time actually doing anything about crime. Most of their time is spent on administrative things or things that you just don't need to be armed and have a license to kill in order to do. But the most important thing is that law enforcement and policing and the carceral system is the enforcement arm of white supremacy. That's what it was designed for, and that's what it does. It has always done. If we want to uproot white supremacy, we have got to uproot all of the pieces of it, and that includes the carceral system. What I want people to see and hear when they think of abolition is a reinvestment of funds, right? Because we have this carceral system, all of the resources that are available to help people rehabilitate, to help people find their way, to help people get to a place where they're being, say, productive citizens, all of those resources are being held captive by the carceral system. You have to get into the carceral system in order to get access to those things. As abolitionists, what I think we want is for those resources to be put and available before you become involved in the criminal justice system. Because what we know is that so many people who get wrapped up in the criminal justice system are there simply because they are poor. And if we can fight poverty, right? If we can fight on the front end, if you have a child that is showing signs of being lost, we have programs that are available now only to families after that child has gotten caught and is being held accountable, quote unquote, for something that they've done. Why not have those services on the front end? That's what abolition is about. It's about dreaming. It's about dreaming of a way that we can help people be full individuals, live their best lives without the need for them to inflict or suffer trauma that changes them molecularly, the kind of trauma that changes a person to the point where they're always hobbled. Abolition is about making sure that no person is hobbled by poverty. No person is hobbled by trauma and tragedy. And every person has the opportunity and has the resources necessary to live their full best lives. No one wants to be poor. Nobody wants to go to prison. Nobody. I don't care what they say. Nobody wants to live in a cage. And living in cages doesn't make anybody safer. 90% of the people that are in prison, that are in cages, are coming home and are expected to be able to rematriculate into a normal society. How do you take a person from a cage and ask them to act normal? It's just crazy. If the idea of putting people in cages is barbaric and inhumane and contrary to traditionally, people of color all over this world have whole cultures that don't involve caging people, right? That thrive, that are fair, that are balanced, that work. We just have to give people the resources on the front end, which is something that we can't do while the carceral system still exists, because those resources are so deeply connected to the economic need to fill up prisons. And so we just want to stop putting people in cages and start figuring out how we can make sure that people have what they need. Because a person who has everything that they need, they don't commit crimes. They don't wreak havoc on communities. A person who has everything that they need is secure. And secure people are happy people, and secure people are safe people. That's what we believe.
You know, it makes me think about the idea of rehabilitation, and, you know, what they've called it, but it doesn't necessarily ever look like that. And so I think about, I had foot surgery some years ago, and, you know, your foot's wrapped up and, you know, you can't move it. You're not allowed to walk on it, whatever. And so when they did unwrap it, I couldn't walk. Like, it just did not work. Right. And so I had to go to physical therapy for weeks and weeks and weeks and do like the menial things of picking up marbles with my toes to try to just get things functioning. But it took this time to get back to a point where it was fully functioning again. And I feel like if people saw that prison is the same thing, where if that's how prison actually was, where something dysfunctional needs to be rehabilitated into a way that it functions fully, you know, in society, then we would then have folks that are able to change mindsets and create skills and be able to function as a part of the system of our community, instead of, you know, like having wrapped up something, then you let it go and you're like, I don't know why it doesn't work, why things aren't functioning.
I love that analogy so much. That is exactly right. And that is exactly the problem with prisons as a whole. And the other part of abolition is to help people and demystify what prisons and law enforcement actually does, as opposed to what we think it does, right? Prisons are terrible places, right? It's a terrible place for anybody to be. Prisons are a place where folks learn some of the worst things because they are so dehumanized. And What we really want to do is see everyone be treated like a human being all the time. To see us as a community respond to somebody acting out or doing something vicious, less as a personal characteristic of that individual, but a symptom of society failing that person, right? And if we think about it like that, we think about it like these folks are sick and we have all failed them. So we have to do whatever is necessary to help them get better without putting them in a cage, without making their sickness worse, without re-traumatizing them. And then we also have to deal with the real economics behind prison, right? In North Carolina, for example, ours is called Correctional Enterprises. It makes $1 billion off of free labor. We've got to know that people in prison are de facto slavery, and their free labor is used in ways that make this country run that people don't realize. And that is also a deeply, deeply rooted problem within the carceral system, is that it is just a new name for slavery and for extracting free labor from people so that other folks can get rich. Like, we've got to be able to look holistically at this thing and really see who the enemy is. And when you take a bird's eye view of what the carceral system actually does, as opposed to what you think it does, the carceral system is really just a big plantation.
So is one of the main sources or economic industries in North Carolina the prison system?
Yes, but not in a way that you would see reflected in any reports or any papers, right? And let me explain what that means. If you go to any state office in North Carolina, the chances are that you are sitting in a chair that was made with slave labor, that you are writing on paper that was pressed by slave labor, by incarcerated people. During COVID, for example, incarcerated folks in North Carolina made millions of gallons of hand sanitizer that they were not able to use inside of the prison because the prison officials said that because it had alcohol in it, that they would be using it as some kind of drug or something. So they were making all of the hand sanitizer that was running free. And I'm sure North Carolina is not unique in this situation. All of the hand sanitizer that we were all using all the time for everyone, and they couldn't use it. They did not have access to it. Emancipate NC, along with a bunch of other organizations here, had to bring a lawsuit against the state of North Carolina to help reduce the overpopulation inside of prisons during COVID, to allow them to at least have a fighting chance at doing real distancing. And the result of that lawsuit was that we got 3,200 people free that probably should have never been in cages in the first place. So, yeah.
So thinking about the economy of the prison system, and you said it was over $1 billion is the revenue. Where does that money go?
Oh, it goes to all kinds of things. It goes to run the state, right? North Carolina, for example, has this huge surplus of money that it won't spend because we are Republican controlled, and our Republicans in our General Assembly have had a supermajority for quite a long time. They don't have one now, but we got Dems that's for sale. So that's they might as well have a supermajority, right? And they spend the money on what they want to spend it on, right? Like right now, North Carolina is defunding schools, public schools, and giving out billions of dollars in vouchers for folks who are sending their kids to private schools, that they can pay for those private schools and give them a discount. You know, we claim to hate welfare so much, except for when it's welfare for the rich.
Yeah, when it's beneficial to businesses.
Exactly. So anyways, yeah. But outside of the things that the incarcerated people produce, and I mean, that ranges anywhere from eyeglasses to food and their, crops, and they are being farmed out to other industries, farmed out to private business owners to work in their factories at, for pennies on the dollar of what they would have to pay someone. But also, North Carolina has 100 counties, 90 of them are rural. Our prisons are in those rural counties, which means that there are whole places in North Carolina, lots of them, where the entire economic stability depends on that prison. Everybody who lives there, somebody works at the prison, they're a guard, they own a restaurant where all the prisoner guards come to eat. They own hotels where people who are coming to see their loved ones sleep when they come to visit. Entire economies are built around making sure that there are people in cages. And if those people are not in cages, then the economies in those rural communities decimates. So that's the economic part of incarceration that people very rarely see.
So that's the real pushback, you think, for folks is that, if we were to abolish prisons or come up with social programs that actually got to the root of poverty and issues within the criminal injustice system, that then other folks would lose their jobs and their livelihoods, and then they wouldn't have skill set to do something else, and or there wouldn't be an industry in which they could raise their family on. So it becomes about, my family needs to eat, so this needs to happen over here.
Exactly.
But then these folks ain't eating, and then they end up doing whatever they do, and they end up inside of the system.
And that is a vicious cycle. And so abolition is about breaking that cycle, right? And really trying to find something that find alternative ways to live, to create economies that is not based on the subjugation of someone else. It's about making everybody better, and it's about making everybody rise. So, yeah, and I'm very proud to say I'm an abolitionist. And in the beginning, I'll be honest with you, I struggled with the concept of abolition before I really fully understood what it was, because even myself, I was brainwashed by white propaganda and American propaganda, westernized propaganda around this need for the carceral system to keep us safe. And the truth of the matter is, especially after I started practicing criminal defense law, what I found was that most of the people who are in prison, most of the people that I interacted with, if they had access to different opportunities, if they had access to different folks, if they had access to a different life, they would be different people. The carceral system is based on this idea that there are just monsters, there are irredeemable people. And I have to tell you that from my work within the criminal justice system, very rarely, if ever, did I run across a person that was irredeemable. What I ran across more than anything was people who were broken, people who were traumatized, people who had been pushed to the limit where they had to make unthinkable choices in order to survive. And what that taught me was that this isn't an issue about correcting people. It is a problem of a broken society. And we have got to change the society. We've got to change the morals, the values of society so that it does not produce broken people.
So, something you said earlier in the conversation around where we're headed and how you can see this free fall that we're in. I want to talk a little bit about what you see of where we're headed and how you think we got there. Because one of the things that had weighed heavy on my mind during the course of last year and the election cycle was there was a really strong messaging around, not putting a felon in office. And I'm just like, why are we using that language? And this is thinking about liberal, I'm using air quotes, liberal folks saying that people who have talked about changes that need to be made within the carceral system, still first card you pull is the felon card. And so in that sense, it's evil, it's wrong, he shouldn't be in office, X, Y, and Z. There's 172,000 reasons why he don't need to be in office.
Man.
And that's not the main one. is that designation. Now, the stuff that was done to get that designation is an issue. But thinking about how we hold all of these different things in our head around, you know, should someone carry this like scarlet letter of being a felon forever? You know, when does that ever drop off? Like something dropping off your credit report or whatever. But then also, like the bigger picture is obviously then there are some people who don't care about that. But yet it matters over here that people stay in prison because it's a certain kind of people that stay in prison. But over here, you don't ever have to be in this prison. And I don't actually care that he is a felon. You know, that don't even matter to me. It ain't even real. But over here, you could do far less as a 14-year-old and you should just be locked up forever. And so all of these things that are flowing through my head, it's like, how did we get here to this point to over apologize for this over here and then feel like we have to beg for humanity over here?
How did we get here? I'm going to say that, and I think I speak for all Black folks, even if you didn't think it consciously, you understood the ramifications. When we elected Barack Obama as the president of the United States and America got a Black president, we all collectively were so happy and so excited to see a Black man and a Black family in that office. But we also knew we was going to pay dearly for it. And we are paying for it right now because white America thought they wanted to look at a Black man in the White House and wanted to look at those beautiful Black babies running around in Rose Garden, but they really didn't, right? America is a country that is racially schizophrenic. We believe we are the land of freedom. You know, we espouse that this is a place where all people can, you know, if you work hard enough, you can become anything. But that's only true for white folks in America, right? That's only supposed to be true for white folks in America. And when Obama and the Obamas went into the White House and made that their residence, throngs of white folks had this immediate sense that their white privilege had somehow failed, that their white privilege was under attack. Because if a Black man can make it to the highest echelon of power in America, then that means that my white privilege is devalued. Now, we realize that is completely ridiculous, but what is sensical and what is factual has nothing really to do with white supremacy, right? So we knew white folks was going to lose their damn minds, right? We knew there was going to be a backlash. What we did not know was that it was going to be to this extent, I think. And Donald Trump, much like Hitler, much like Adolf Hitler, stepped into a vacuum at the right time where the majority population was feeling threatened, right? If you know history, you know that in Germany at that time, so many of the Germans were off fighting the war, and who was left were Jewish folks that had really started running the country and gaining a lot of wealth and maintaining and holding the ship down and doing really well. When those folks came back from the war, right, they were like, oh, wait a minute. Who told these Jews they could have all of this? This should be ours. And they had a real sense of entitlement to being on top, entitlement to privilege, that was then exploited by a charismatic leader who was crazy, right? In Germany, it was Hitler. In America, it's Trump. And Trump isn't even just crazy. He's also really stupid. But poor white folks were so, and even rich white folks, all white folks, were so desperate to have someone remind them and tell them and make them feel like their white privilege made them better than Black folks, made them better than brown folks. And they needed that so deeply, they cut off their own faces to be able to feel as though their white privilege had a value that could not be overcome. That's where we are, right? We're at a place where white folks, they want us to disappear. They want Black folks and brown people to be erased. And, I spent a whole year doing trainings around Project 2025 and trying to help people before the election understand the ramifications of what was in this document. But I would start that training with a message of hope or a message of truth, right? That Project 2025 is a love letter to your power. It is a love letter to Black ingenuity and to Black power, Black political power, Black economic power, because no one spends that much time trying to stand on the neck of folks who they think are less than them, right? What they know for sure is that if left to our own devices, if we are actually living in a country where everyone pulls themselves up by their bootstraps and is able to actually get access to the things that they earn because they deserve them, that they can't compete with us. So they need to stand on our necks in ways that keep us suppressed. That's what Project 2025 is. That's what America is, right? And that's the phase that we are in this country right now. And we've seen it before, right? The end of antebellum slavery created a dynamic in this country that is just like the one that we are facing right now. Post-Reconstruction is what we're in right now. That's what this looks like. That's what this backlash is. And there really is no difference except that we've got people in charge of the government. That backlash has been so strong that these folks have forgotten or have decided that democracy, even democracy, can be sacrificed if it means that they get to hold on to their white supremacy. And that is an incredibly dangerous place for us to be. And it's a dangerous place for anybody who is not a white man.
How bad do you think it's going to get? And then, what does that look like for Black folks?
Bad. I think that for Black folks, it looks like part of this analysis has to be based in and deeply rooted in accountability to people like us who commit our lives to protecting Black people. My organization is about to launch this campaign called With, Without, and Against. With the state, without the state, against the state. We have spent so much time doing work with the state to try to improve the conditions of Black folks. We've done so much work against the state, trying to push back against and fight against and respond to the harmful measures that come out of the government that are oppressive to Black people. But we have done almost nothing without the state. We have completely forgotten or discarded as a people our ability to be self-sustaining, our ability to live without government, our ability to grow our own food, to have our own schools, to create our own create our own safety forces, and create our own mechanisms for holding people accountable. And so because of that, because the lack of that structure, the lack of that personal self-sustainability, that communal self-sustainability, I think things are going to get really, really bad for us, right? And for Black folks, right? I think that we are going to see our children suffer because there's going to be a writ large mass exodus from public education, and all that will be left will be our babies, right? We're going to see them close down our HBCUs, and we're going to see us starve. We're going to see us lose jobs. We're going to see us not be able to find work because we have not built infrastructures where we can employ ourselves, where we can make sure that we can feed and sustain our own families. It's going to get bad. It's going to get bad. And the only way that we really survive is if we come together, be honest about what we need, and kind of shake off the shackles of white supremacy that even the most radical of us have adopted, right? Our response to them banning Toni Morrison books in schools should not be, oh my God, the sky is falling. Our response should be, well, we'll just give our babies those books to ourselves.
Right. We'll buy them and have them at home.
Right. School isn't the only place that my kids read. And for most of us, that's true, to a certain extent. Like in my home, my girls they did school and all of that stuff. My girls are grown now, but there were certain books you weren't leaving my house without having read, not as an adult, right? And that was my own reading list. So, and I did that because my mother did it to my brother and I, right? There are certain books, nobody in my house left my house without reading The Spook Who Sat by the Door. It is mandatory reading. You're never going to see that in school. But at my house, it was mandatory reading. We never had the privilege of allowing the oppressor to educate us. They are never going to educate us or give us the opportunities to overcome their oppression. Never, right? But we forgot that somewhere along the way. And so instead of taking the power that we were gaining when we were working with the system and working against the system and using that to invest in building our own infrastructures, we just kind of got complacent, right? And because of that, folks are going to suffer. And I lose sleep about that shit. It fucks with me, right? That it never even occurred to me that for every win that I got against the state, I should be using some of that intentionally and strategically to build self-sustaining infrastructure for the communities that I'm fighting for. That shit keeps me up at night. It's going to keep me up at night. And because we don't have those systems, it's going to be hard, but not forever, right? Not forever, because it will, I think the harshness of what is going to come is going to force us to resegregate in ways that will be beneficial, because desegregation was the worst thing that happened to Black sustainability.
I was going to bring that up because it makes me think about the term learning in a burning house. And actually, just this morning, I was watching a PBS documentary on Zora Neale Hurston. Mm-hmm. And she made a statement after Brown versus Board of Education around why she didn't think it was a great idea. And her thought was, it's like, why integrate into a place where somebody doesn't want me there? Why do I want to? You gonna make somebody who don't want to be around me have to stand next to me? It makes no sense. And it doesn't do anything for us in the long term. There are folks who want us next to them, and then there are those that don't. And so I don't need to go stand next to somebody who does not like me just based off the color of my skin. Like, it's unnecessary for me to function around you. I don't need to shop with you. I don't need to spend money in your establishment. I don't need to live next to you. None of that is necessary for my survival. But then this idea of this kumbaya world where everyone can hold hands and get along doesn't really exist as much as some folks may want it to. So then it's a change in mindset of like, what does that look like to say that I can be over here and I can educate my children and I can open businesses and shop in places around people who want to be around me? And what does that look like? And how do we get there?
I think that one of the silver linings of this uncloseting of blatant racism and white supremacy is that we are going to have to do that. We are going to be forced to take care of ourselves again. Just like when we had to open up our own HBCUs, when we had to open up our own grocery stores, when we had to open up our own libraries, when we had to open up our own transportation systems, because we had no access to those systems inside of the mainstream economic world. So we created our own. And that is what we're going to have to do. That is what's going to happen. Now, we are in a position, I think, as a people where I saw a friend of mine who I fuss with all the time, reminds me that Black households in America, according to Nielsen, have $1.8 trillion in spending power. If we take our $1.8 trillion and strategically reinvest it into entities, people, and institutions that will feed ourselves, will feed our children, will support us, we are unstoppable. And that is what we're going to have to do. We are going to have to be intentional and strategic about what we do with our economic power, because especially if we want to make sure that we also are able to do the with and the against of the state, right? Because I am no big proponent of we should be fully self-sufficient and we should count on the government for nothing, because bullshit. We built this government. We built the dollars that exist inside of the American economy. We are the American economy. And reparations is a real thing, and we are absolutely entitled to get something for the hundreds of years of free labor that our people spent building this nation. So they owe us. They owe us. I'm not saying that they don't, and I'm not letting them off the hook. But at the same time, we have got to be prepared and willing to and understand that by saying that they owe us doesn't mean that we are beholden to them. It means that they are beholden to us. It doesn't mean that we don't independently try to build our own economic systems and we don't independently try to create our own housing. It means that we do that right? We do that and demand from them what is ours. And I think that's what's going to happen. And I'm prayerful that that is what we will see, because the dismantling of rights and programs that is happening under this Trump administration right now is going to take decades to undo. It will take generations to get us back to the place that we were 6 months ago. And that is just a reality that we are going to have to deal with and we are going to have to face. I think we have, for Black folks, what we found out in this last election was that we don't have no friends. We don't have no real allies. You understand what I'm saying? This was the one time when we said LGBT community that we stand with, brown, Hispanic communities that we stand with, anybody who was being oppressed, Black folks will stand with. This was the one time we said, we need you to stand with us. Stand with us. Trust us. We know that this is going to be bad. Even if you can't see it, trust us. Stand with us. And they didn't. Not the way they needed to. We did. I'm very proud of that. Like, we voted almost in a monolith, right? We understood what had to happen, and we saw the harms of another Trump administration. It's just that none of the people that we called allies did. And that is a reality that we also have to deal with. And that is a fallacy, and this false sense of shared goals. And I'm not saying that there is not room for coalition building, but I'm saying that every other part of the coalition, except for Black folks, has also independent structures that is specifically and exclusively committed to advancing their specific goals. But Black folks seem to think that we can't just talk about Black people because then that makes us racist or it makes us bad people or whatever, right?
That is a very true statement.
That's gotta stop.
I've seen that over and over. I had someone interview for a job with me some years ago, and she was like, well, I think there's room where you need to include other folks in the conversation around the work that you're doing. I said, when Black women win, everybody wins. When Black women are centered, then it's not Black Lady Sick Days that we're fighting for. We're fighting for paid sick days for everyone. And this was a Black person who said this to me. And I was just like, well, this ain't no way for you to get a job here starting off. But also understand that there is a reason for this strategy and how we see things. And it's not racist to center our needs in any way.
It's factually based. Here's what we know. We talk all this talk about DEI and these dog whistles around DEI and equity and inclusion. And for the majority of white folks and Black folks, if you want to be real, when they hear DEI, they hear Black. right? When they hear a diversity hire, they hear some unqualified Black person. They picture Sambo, right? That's who they picture doing the job. When you look, though, at the numbers, Black folks are the smallest minority of folks who benefit from DEI programs. The people who benefit the most from DEI programs are white women. It's not us. But they talk about it like it is us, and they use it as a synonym for Black person, or, what they really
affirmative
want to say.
action.
Affirmative action the same way. When you look at those numbers, we don't benefit from that. And so my organization is deeply committed and unapologetically committed to the liberation of Black folks, because what I know for sure is that when Black people win, when that win trickles all the way down to Black folks, everybody gets a piece of that pie. Everybody does. So if Black folks win, and if I put all my focus on making sure that Black folks win, that is not just, there's nothing racist about that. That is the most inclusive work I could possibly be doing. Because for the win to trickle all the way down to us, everybody has gotten something before us. Everybody gets something. The water rises for everyone, because we have seen ourselves aligned with other fights that aren't necessarily Black-centered, but we have lended our voice and our power and our effort, and we have seen those folks win.
And our strategy and
huge
playbook.
wins, right? But the problem is that they get those wins, and then they use those wins to adopt adjacency to whiteness. And they forget about the work that we put in to help them get there. They don't come back for us. It's not reciprocal. And I think we saw that play out in these numbers. So what is going to have to happen for Black folks is, we saw what happened. We saw what happened in this last election when we said unapologetically, the election of this man means that my people will suffer inextricably. We need you to stand with us to fight, push back against this tyranny. And they just didn't show up. Not like we showed up for them.
So tell me what you think about the boycott around these different DEI rollbacks, because knowing that it didn't affect us as much as people are making it seem like it affected us, and at a smaller rate. And I'm also not seeing, and maybe I'm not saying because I'm not in those bubbles, I don't see the ones who are mostly affected by the DEI rollbacks talking about boycotts, talking about where I'm not going to shop at Target or Walmart or whatever. So then why are we on this soapbox doing that? And should we even be there? Does it even matter if we shop at Target or not?
So here's the thing. I think it does matter because of that $1 trillion of spending power for Black folks, right? Because our power, the one tool that we have never used effectively is our economic power. And we have that, right? Now, while the impetus for this boycott is maybe not as pure as we want it to be, I think the outcome can be very powerful, right? I think that if we actually do extract our dollars from capitalism in America in a real way all at one time, that would send a message for a day. What I would really like to see is for us to say, we are going to take those dollars from you and we are going to pour those dollars into our communities. We are going to buy Black en masse. That would be way more powerful, right? So on the 28th, I'm buying only Black toilet paper, only Black oil, I'm only going to Black mechanics. I'm only buying gas from Black-owned gas stations, right? And I think that would show us what our economic power is, and it will remind the rest of the world that we actually do have a bargaining chip that we are willing to use strategically. That I think would be helpful. Now, I don't know that that's happening. I know that that's not happening. But for us to just be talking about fighting back against DEI is, again, It is a meaningful and a righteous cause. But at this moment in time, it is not our cause, right? It is not the thing that's going to save us over the next 4 or 8 or 10 years. And what we need to be doing is figuring out what the things are that directly impact our survival and putting our efforts behind that, right? I can't tell you how many times I saw people talk about boycotting Target, and the alternative to Target is Costco. Ma'am, no. Y'all missing the whole point, right? Like, the alternative to Costco is find a Black business. The alternative to shopping at Target with the Black business inside of Target is taking your Black dollars and still spending it with those business owners directly. Like, not giving Target a cut of the money, not getting anybody a cut of the money, just investing and pouring our economic resources into things and people that look and believe in us. And that will be, and I believe that that is where this train will get eventually. We're just not there yet. It's just leaving the station. And
Well, we have to want to take the extra effort too, because that means that you might have to take 5 more steps to get there, whatever that looks like. You have to, order it online, or you have to go out of town, or you have to do something different.
Or you
it's not
gotta
going to
wait.
be as convenient, or you have to wait for it, right? And so,
or pay more for it, for God's sakes.
Heaven forbid.
Pay more for it. You got to pay more for it. Yeah. Like, this idea of this rugged individualism is truly a Eurocentric form of life. It is not indigenous. It's not natural to Black folks to not see ourselves in a collective. And we've forgotten that. And again, this goes back to that accountability, right? That accountability piece. We have got to go back to doing what we know is right, to having real communities, to creating real communities, to pouring into things that pour back into us, and not to just throwing our dollars at white folks in hopes that they will treat us better. We got to stop hoping that they're going to treat us better, because that's not what's going to happen. So we got to treat us better, and we can. And we know how to do it. It's not hard. We don't even have to go back 4 generations to a time when Black communities were self-sustaining. We know what it looks like. We know how to do it. We just have to do it.
So you mentioned something about being an empty nester and having grown-up children. And I think we are in that same era of our lives, which is a very interesting era in which to be. How are you discussing this with your, as I call them, tax-paying voters? And what are they seeing and feeling? And do you feel like there is a connection there that generation might help get us where we need to be? Because a lot of times people like to say that, next generation, they're not engaged, they're lost in this and that and the other. And I don't necessarily find that to be true, but I'd love to hear how your kids are talking to you about this.
My children were raised very, very politically aware. They were raised in a household where our whole lives revolved around loving and improving the conditions and getting to freedom for Black folks. So my kids are there, right? Like, we had an all-Black Christmas this year. So we only bought products, and it was their idea, right? Like, they were like, we're only buying Black stuff, mommy. So we found sneakers and clothes and, whatever. Everything that we bought this year was Black. But my oldest daughter has her doctorate in pharmacy. She's 25. She'll be 26 this year. She's got a very, very good job, but doing diversity, equity, and inclusion at a pharmaceutical company. So, whatever. But this Christmas, she brought all of us designer bags from, we're only buying Black, right? And they got it. We bought Black sneakers from Black sneaker companies and all that kind of stuff. So they get it, and they understand, and they're scared. They are scared. They are also like, Mama, our passports are good, right? Like, do we have a plan? Do we have a way that if we got to get out of here, we can get out? Yes. But they are also very prepared and understand that the idea that self-sustainability is the way that we survive. My oldest is very committed to using some of her her big girl money, that's what we call it, right? Using her big girl money to open up a safe space for Black creatives. So she wants to buy a building and separate it into individual workspaces for people to do hair and people to do nails, but also so that it could be a community center, and well, not a center, but a place where the community can convene for political education, for economic education, for whatever, right? She is very much like, I want to quit this corporate job and come home, and I want to, maybe work part-time in like a Walgreens or something, and then spend the rest of my time working with folks who are helping Black people get access to quality medicines and quality, or at least helping them, assess our medical needs and come up with holistic ways to address those medical needs. So my family and my children are very much focused on, and I think their friends and their generation are focused on the sustainability piece in real ways. They are coming to the conclusion quicker than we did, and that our generations will, that if we never want to be in a situation where we are this afraid, where we are this fearful, where we don't know where our next meal is coming from, our proverbial next meal is coming from, we have got to build places so that we know where our meals are coming from and that they're coming from us. And that is what I'm seeing from my children and their friends, this real deep investment in creating and building self-sustainability within the Black community.
So tell me what your version of the American dream looks like.
My version of the American dream looks like, well, it looks like equity, right? It starts with reparations for Black folks, and not just monetary reparations, but making us whole, right? It starts with reconciling the harm that has been done and making that harm right. Because you cannot build on quicksand. And so to get to the American dream, we have got to start with a holistic and an honest reckoning with the trauma that America as it exists has caused, and the exploitation that America as it exists has used to create this sense of white supremacy, right? And once we do that redistribution of wealth, that redistribution of power, I think the American dream looks just like they claim it's supposed to look, right? Where everybody gets a chance, where everybody has the resources that they need to get ahead, where every man and every woman is able to feed their children and house their children, and not just survive, but thrive. What the American dream is to me for Black folks is a place where in America, everyone can thrive. And right now, and as it has been since the inception of this country, that has not been the goal, right? The goal has been for some people to thrive on the backs of other people's survival. And so the American dream to me is a place where everybody can thrive, where everyone has the space to dream 10 years down the road, where everyone has access to build generational wealth, where everyone has access to quality educations, where everyone has access to safe spaces and to not live in constant fear, where being the only Black person in the room is no longer a thing. I'm never the only Black person in the room. And if I am the only Black person in the room, that I don't have to be fearful, that I don't have to be on guard, that a whole society is going to hold each other accountable for harming other folks in that society. That's what the American dream looks like to me.
And so what does reparations look like? Is it the proverbial 40 acres and a mule?
Ma'am, I think it is all of that. I think it is the proverbial 40 acres and a mule. I think that it means that Black folks should not have to pay income taxes ever again or any kind of damn taxes ever again. I think that it means that we should be given free access to higher education. I think that it means that all schools should be funded at the same level, right? With the same resources. I think that it means that schools where children are historically disadvantaged get, you know, get a proportionate access to the resources that they need to get them on par with the best schools in the country. I think that reparations means that we specifically invest in creating Black doctors, Black lawyers, Black accountants, because what we know is that when Black professionals are in medical spaces, are in, courtrooms, that things are fairer, right? All of that is reparations. Reparations means opening up these damn prisons and letting all them Black people that they put in jail during during the crack epidemic, all them people come home and get, not just come home, but come home to something. They all have jobs. They all have a way to sustain themselves. They all have a way to build some lives. Reparations looks like tearing down Confederate statues and outlawing them. I think that reparations is about making us whole. And we get so bogged down on the money part that we don't think about the real service parts that are necessary. You know what I mean? The educational parts, the fully investing in Black farmers and allowing Black farmers to create and have full shares of access to different type of food markets so that we can produce our own food. All of those things. Like, that's what reparations look like to me.
Yeah, I've said for a number of years that I'm plotting and planning and wanting to do that. Reparations is a part of that, and thinking about how reparations specifically for the ruthless ways in which Black women have been treated, when we start thinking about the Mississippi appendectomies and forced sterilizations, even when it comes to hair care products and the number of Black women who now have uterine cancer and fibroids and all of these things from things that they knew they were putting in hair care relaxers and that sort of thing, and telling us that we needed to look a certain kind of way in order to make it into corporate America. So you needed to straighten your hair, and by straightening your hair, you're putting this lye in it, and this lye, now you have cancer. I think that thinking about how economically neighborhoods have eroded because of the carceral system and what those neighborhoods could have looked like when folks were able to be at home and able to seed and grow business and commerce. I think all of those things require reparations.
I agree with that 100%. I also think that, I think that reparations should include some monetary recuperation for the hundreds and thousands of Black folks who built this underground economy that exists. Now that it has become mainstream, now that you're making it legal, these folks built and created your client base, right? Your legal client base. They don't get anything. It's like a mergers and acquisitions, right? Like, let them folks out of prison. The fact that there's still people in prison for moving marijuana, even pounds of marijuana, while other people have legitimized it and are making legitimate money off of it. Yeah, no, you got to let them people out of prison for that. Reparations looks like the American government compensating Black communities for the crack epidemic that we know was fully orchestrated, not just to impact our communities, but so that it would minimally impact white communities. We know that our government did that to us. We know that our government tested on us for, Tuskegee, for syphilis. We know all of these things. So you got to make right for that. We know that the government allowed for toxic waste dumps to be put in Black communities, that Black folks are always put in the most environmentally unfriendly parts of any community. And as a result of that, our babies have asthma disproportionately. Our babies have health issues disproportionately. We have health issues as adults disproportionately. You got to pay for all of that. You got to fix all of that. That's what reparations means. It means you repair us. You repair the harm that you did. And
because it was done on purpose.
That was done on purpose. And the harm that America intentionally inflicted on Black Americans is ungodly. That's why they don't want to talk about it, right? I mean, I think so much, I have this wild conspiracy theory that so much of erasing Black history is directly correlated to the advancement of the reparations movement. Because if you can't remember what we did to you, then what I have to pay you to make you whole is less, right? If I tell you that slavery was mutually beneficial, then what I owe you in reparations for your time as an enslaved person has to be smaller, right? If I tell you that, and we see it all the time. If I tell you that Black people in the NFL, Black NFL sports players are inherently less smart than white NFL players. So I don't have to pay you as much for your concussion injuries as I would have to pay a white man, which is actually the practice of the NFL. Like that is not, I'm not making that up. Literally, Black folks, they pay more for white folks who suffer concussions and the medical ramifications that come with those concussions in football than they do Black players, because Black players innately had less brain cells to lose. This is the kind of shit that we need reparations around.
Yeah, because this goes back to saying that we don't feel pain in the same way.
We don't
it's that
feel
same
pain.
conversation.
We don't love our babies, right? Abolishing the policing system, the family policing system, right? How disproportionately Black women are separated from our children for things like
not being able to keep the heat on.
Right, for economic issues, not being able to keep the heat on, not being able to keep a roof over their head, that other folks are not separated from their families for. These are the kinds of things. So reparations is holistic. Reparations is about making right all of the wrongs that come with white supremacy, period.
So I want to end this with this question, because I see you and the work you're doing, and I see the lens in which you see a lot of things through, partially because we are in the same industry and do a lot of the same work. Also, we are Black women. Also, we are mothers. Like, there's so many different layers there. But for folks who are not in this work, for folks who don't see this on a regular basis and don't see the world through your lens, how do we move folks to a place where they believe in the humanity of people? How do we get them to understand that safety is not through policing or through prison, and that reparations is a thing that, again, not only will do something specifically for the healing of Black folks that built America, but also for everyone else, because it moves our humanity as a whole along?
So I'm trying to choose my words very carefully because I'm in a very cynical place. But I think the most important people that we have to convince of all of that is Black folks. And I think we might be the only people that are actually convincible, right? I think that there are large parts of our community, majority parts of our community, who are either incapable of seeing my humanity or have convinced themselves that their humanity can only exist if mine doesn't, right? I don't know that we could or should spend a lot of time trying to change those folks because they're not movable. Many of them aren't, and that's just the truth of the matter. What I want to do is move us, is move people, is make Black people realize our worth, help Black folks realize our value. And once we do that, once we can accomplish that, the rest of it will fall into place because this world functions on the backs of melanated folks, right? And once we realize that instead of carrying it on our backs, we can stand up straight and carry it on our shoulders, that's when things will change for us. That's when things will change. How do we do that is the question. And I think how we do that is just like how we do everything. We look to the past, right? We look to the past to see who we've been as Black folks in America, how we survived as Black folks in America, and remind people. Like, this is what I tell when people talk, when I'm talking about abolition and abolishing law enforcement. One thing that I say to folks, Black folks specifically, that I know is going to give everyone in the room pause is this. 70 years ago, no Black person in America would have even fathomed calling the police. Why? Because we knew that the police were a direct extension of the Klan, that our safety did not live there. And we figured out ways to make ourselves safe, independent of them. A lifetime ago, right? These aren't hard concepts. White supremacy is just a master gaslighter, and it makes us believe that we need the institution to survive, despite the fact that we know we don't, that history has told us that we don't. History has told us specifically that when we are mostly self-sufficient, mostly self-reliant, we thrive, right? That's the thing, is getting past the gaslighting of white supremacy. And we can do that. And I think this is a moment, while it would be very difficult for Black folks, this is a moment for those of us who are committed to seeing true, full, autonomous liberation for Black people. In this moment, we got to do the real work. Like, this is the moment where we got to have the courage of our convictions and really help folks get back to a place where we see our power, where we see Black glory, where we see the strength of community, and that we invest in it. Yeah, I'm at this stage, and maybe it's because I'm old. You know, I'm gonna be 51 in 2 weeks. Maybe it's because of that, but I don't have any more time or energy that I want to give to trying to convince you to see my humanity. I would much rather just focus on building the people who do see it, or building the folks who should see it, who have become blind to it because of white supremacy and because of the brainwashing, the cancer that white supremacy is. I would much rather spend my time extricating that cancer from our community and from our people than trying to kill the cancer. Just keep it yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I also think that the gaslighting around policing, it's very true. And also, I think an added factor to that is the separation of us as a community and not being communal to protect each other from whatever those things are that are harming us. And even if that's other folks within our community or our families,
even if it's us,
so, right, even if it's us, there are others within our community, like folks showed up, your brothers, your cousins, whatever, they showed up to make sure that somebody wasn't harming someone in a certain kind of way. And, you know, we've come away from that. And then we've also come away from folks who didn't listen to the other folks in the community and like, let me readjust how I'm doing something because my community is is calling me out and calling me in, that I need to make changes within myself instead of saying call the police and
that's
and pushing those buttons to make people go that direction.
And that's the accountability piece that I think that is going to be the hard part. That self-accountability, the ability for us to be able to look at ourselves as a community, see where we failed each other as a community, and then work to do that hard work of making right within ourselves. And once we are able to do that, then they can't stop us, and they know that. And then the next time they tell us that they're going to stop teaching Black history in schools, we don't have to bat an eye, because we teaching Black history at home. We teaching Black history in our own communities. The next time they tell us that they're going to cut off WIC or, food services, we don't got to worry about it as much, because we got our own food pantries. We have our own community gardens. Everybody is going to eat, whether they get this WIC card or not. When we get to a place where, when they tell us they're going to stop housing subsidies, we can say, okay, because we have moved back to a model where we are doing multi-generational living, and that, Big Mama's house, everybody can go to Big Mama's house and have a roof over their head, right? That is what this moment is going to create us to do. It's just this moment that we are in America right now is going to accelerate the need for us to go back to our roots.
And on that note, ma'am, thank you. I knew this would be a good conversation. I will say this might be the blackest conversation that we've had on Sticky Notes, certainly in a while. And I appreciate you immensely. This is a great Saturday morning conversation. I think this is a great way for folks to wake up and listen and start to plan and think about, like, what is it that I can do? Not what everybody else can do, and then wait on someone else to do whatever it is. But for us to collectively come together and save ourselves, save our children, save our communities, so that we can thrive and have whatever our version of the American dream is. And so I am thankful and grateful to the work that you are doing in North Carolina, which it doesn't just affect North Carolina, because that is also very much a ripple effect the same way across the countries.
And let me just say this. I want to also say that for everyone that is listening, my organization is Emancipate NC. That's emancipatenc.org. If you believe in the work that we are doing, if you believe that it is necessary for us to save ourselves, for us to be our own saviors, then we have got to invest in the folks that are doing that work. So I'm asking you all to donate to emancipatenc.org, so that we do not have to depend on the kindness of white folks to liberate ourselves.
And I have to say amen. I will make sure that your information is in the show notes and available, and so that we can pass this around, pass this collection plate, and make it happen, because we all we got.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Dawn.
Save us. We are who we've been waiting for. Thank you so much, Erika, for inviting me on. I love this conversation, and I love you, sis.
It was so much fun. And I love you too. Thank you. Y'all, this is Sticky Note Conversations. I'll see y'all next week.
Thanks for listening to Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Hosted and executively produced by Erika Washington, with editing by Black Gypsy LLC and Simone Endres. Special thanks to KUNV 91.5 in Las Vegas. This show is powered by Make It Work Nevada, a project of Tides Advocacy.